All right, welcome ladies and gentlemen to our spring 2026 open mic night for writers. Welcome to Phoenixville Public Library, those of you in our room tonight and those of you out there on Zoom for our semi-annual celebration of the Phoenixville's writing talent, Phoenixville area writing talent. Actually, it expands beyond Phoenixville as we have a writer joining us tonight on Zoom from Maryland. Our writers will be going in random order. I have tickets with their names on it in a box back here. Each writer will have 5 minutes to read. I'll be starting the timer as soon as you start reading. If you have any introductory remarks, go ahead and make them. We have a lighter turnout than usual this time. We have 11 writers, but we are going to have an enjoyable night nonetheless. I always look forward to this event, and I know some of you in here do as well. A lot of familiar faces and some new ones joining us this time. All right. Let's pull the first name out of the hat, and going first will be C.K. Sobey. Is Cass's nom de plume. Cass has written and published 4 books. First is an illustrated children's book called Henry the Turtle. It was published in 2015. She fully retired from her professional businesses, hypnotherapy, and facilitating creative workshops in 2020 to spend more time seriously writing and reimagining the next phase of her life. She's currently working on a novelette. Cass has lived in the Valley Forge area of Pennsylvania since 1999. 2 of her favorite rituals are walking and letting loose in the kitchen with her recipes. Cass's posts can be found on Substack. Her writing has been featured in several publications, including Publishers Weekly, Reader's Views, Inside Scoop, The Reflectionary, The Midwest Review, and 101 Words. Find her at cassobey@gmail.com or www.innerharvesting.com. Cass, welcome. Take it away.
Thank you, Mark. This is a picture of my grandmother. It'll all become clear. I'm not reading any stories from any of my books this evening. A few months ago, I joined a writer's group to write about grandmothers, and I had no idea what I was going to write about, which is why I took it. And then somebody wrote a story, and I thought they mentioned a walnut, which for some odd reason inspired me, and I began writing.
What do you think?
The creative mind is such a place.
Or a weird person.
Yeah. Nana and the Me. I want to begin from where I am now, remembering things as they come to me, Nana. I've never doubted that if I didn't visit with you, Papa, and Uncle Roy during the summers and holidays in my young life, I wouldn't be alive today. Without meaning to, you instilled in me a strong backbone. In your coldness and dislike for my father, Nana, those emotions spilled over to me. Through your silent resentment at the daughter I was, I developed the stamina and determination I would later need to live and to thrive. Thank you for that, Nana. My years visiting with you allowed my imagination to evolve. The days so often spent alone helped me find my creative self. Thank you for that also, Nana. Plus, you did make the best tuna fish sandwiches I've ever eaten. When you worked at the button factory, I was allowed to spend time in a room that held hundreds of one-of-a-kind buttons, containing all different shapes, sizes, and colors of buttons. I called it the Room of Lost Buttons, and you let me take home as many buttons as I could hold in my 2 little hands every time I went with you. And so, the story of Little Pepper. Little Pepper was a diminutive creature of the forest. She was called Little because of her dainty size and teeniness. She was half as tall as my thumb. The size of the tiny yellow peppers her grandmother used to cook for her, and Little Pepper enjoyed eating. Thus the name Little Pepper. Little Pepper called her grandmother Nana. Little Pepper lived with her parents in a city called the Big Apple. She didn't understand this as she never saw a giant apple, at least in her neighborhood. And Little Pepper would stay for many weeks and sometimes months with her Nana, Papa, and Uncle Roy in a place that was much quieter than the Big Apple. She often climbed the long, curling vines up to the tops where the sweet-smelling flowers bloomed. She would lay in their cushiony centers and look out at the clouds while daydreaming. She knew about going into the clouds when living creatures passed on. And when she came in for dinner, her knees were usually scraped and dried leaves were generally sticking out of her hair. She was scolded for her clothes, now grass-stained and very dirty. And she was told to stand in a corner. Well, Little Pepper didn't think this was fair, and a battle of who was more stubborn would begin. At a young age, Nana's own mother went into the clouds. Her father found a new mother who wasn't nice to Nana, so Nana left her home far away to come here. Little Pepper wondered how Nana felt, leaving everything she knew, when she would often fall asleep in her Papa's big bed wondering about this. A few years after Papa went into the clouds, her grandmother fell in love. She started smiling a lot, and this was new for Little Pepper to see. So it began a new time for Little Pepper with her grandmother. Creating this fanciful story has reminded me of Nana's smiles. She did actually fall in love with a good man who had loved her silently for many years, and Nana became a nicer person. After I moved away, she started writing letters to me, and I didn't visit with her as much as I used to, as I was on my journey to find my smile. I hope she knew this. I think she did, and understood me more than most. And in time, I believe Nana became my biggest ally.
And I should have mentioned at 5 minutes you'll hear an alarm, a bell going off from my phone, and after that does, just pick the next convenient point to wrap up your reading.
Convenient to us or to you?
Convenient to respecting everyone's time. Okay.
The rowdy bunch.
I didn't think I'd have to be a policeman here tonight. All right. Up next we have Craig Gussman. Craig is the author of the novella Anwin and the Discordian and the short story and poetry collection Through Dark into Light. When he was young and idealistic, he wrote the feature film Granted, which can be found on YouTube. By day, Craig has a fancy title at a federal IT contractor. After 5 p.m. and on weekends, Craig spends time with his wife and son, cleans up after 2 cats, volunteers in his community, and if time allows, tippity-taps at his keyboard. And sometimes he updates his website, craiggussman.com. Craig, welcome.
Thank you. So if you'll permit me, I'm going to read 2 short pieces. The first is called Pain to Pass the Time. I am 35 years old and diagnosed with cancer. I am 2 months old and just rolled off the bed. The pain is sharp and surprising, and if I could wonder at this young age, I might wonder if this is the most hurt I'll ever be. I am 19 and my girlfriend just left me for someone else. I can wonder now, but it's become a familiar question with a familiar answer. I am 36 and the surgeon cuts into me to remove the tumor. The next month is spent in the hospital full of tubes and emaciated. The question and answer remain. I am 10 and have gone headfirst over my handlebars, scraping my face across concrete. It hurts, but not as badly as when my mother is too drunk to drive me to the ER, so my friend's grandmother does. I am 30 and she has her first miscarriage. My wonder deepens into a disdain that something so innocent can be taken away without so much as a hello. I am still 36 and finally home, but too exhausted and in too much pain to move. My 2-year-old son is distant. He barely recognizes me. I am 13 and forced to choose a parent. The choice is easy and somehow that's worse. I am 6 and have just been punched for the first time. I don't yet know that I can punch back. By the time I realize it, there will never be another opportunity to do so. I am 37 and wondering if it will all end sooner than I thought. So why focus on all the pain the simple act of living creates? I am 14 years old and kissing a girl for the first time. More experienced, she lives a hickey on my cheek that I tell everyone is a bruise during playing hockey. I am 4 years old and meet my first best friend. He lives down the street and we'll get an entire decade together before we drift apart. I am 35 and have brought my son and my wife to my last radiation treatment. My son rings the bell before we meet the radiation oncologist who tells me the tumor shrunk by 2/3. I am 22 and riding bikes with my friends. I feel nostalgic and melancholy about an act we haven't done since learning to drive, but also happier than I can remember being for a long while. I am 34 and holding my son for the first time. I am too overwhelmed by this fragile miracle of a human to remember how I feel. I am 60. My son has grown, and I rarely think about recurrence. I breathe in and out deeply, appreciative of every moment. I'm 12, and win a 10-speed bike in a raffle at school. It's purple and too tall for me, but I don't care. I've never won anything before. I'm 23, and meet the woman I will marry. I know this fact almost immediately, but do not dare tell her for many years. I am 36, and several months away from the last surgery, almost feel normal. I work and raise my son and exercise. And feel like maybe the cancer will eventually let me go. I'm 5 months old and experiencing awe for the first time in the shape of an autumn leaf drifting from tree to ground. I love autumn from then on. I'm 35 and don't yet know of the cancer. I look at my son and my wife and my life, and I'm grateful to have so much to lose. That's one. This one's a little bit lighter. There was a man, this is called a nursery rhyme. There was a man who died young. He waited a long time to be reunited with his love. When the day finally came, he picked flowers for a bouquet and waited by the pearly gates. His love, restored to youth, smiled so wide and cried so hard as she passed through, only to shake her head and tell him she would spend eternity with her second husband instead. And that's it for me.
Good job.
All right, thank you, thank you. All right, who do we have next? Next we have Manisha Patel. Manisha is a creative professional passionate about global understanding and community engagement. She served 6 years as president of the United Nations Association of Greater Philadelphia and is a board member of Peace Day Philly and the Coalition for Peace Action. With experience living in London, Hong Kong, and Malaysia, she brings cultural sensitivity and a global perspective to her work. An avid photographer and storyteller, Manisha is now exploring writing as a new avenue for creativity and connection. Manisha.
Hi. I'm doing this for the first time. I wrote this poem from personal experience. It's called The Immigrant. This I have heard again and again from all those who left their land. I will always be of two places. I will never fully belong. The comforts of the new place, this place I now call home, live in my body where my mind has stretched and grown. Through new roads, new accents, new food, here I have built a life, made friends, traveled far, raised my children on the promise of wider life. And yet, my heart wanders back to those old spaces, to carefree days of laughter, to the rising aromas of tea stalls on long, unhurried university afternoons, to the stories buried deep in my surname, back to the land where my roots first took hold, where my ancestors lived in soil and in silence, where even the quiet had a memory, where rivers were never just water, but something sacred. An immigrant's heart, always divided, wanders barefoot across the cracked pavements of memory, to live here, fully here, but echo there, between two skies, between two homes, between two versions of home. And I had one more poem that I wrote. This was my first poem when I joined the writing group. And I wrote it to describe how humans, about human nature, that they spend all their life to do the right thing and still miss some big things along the way. And I wrote this in memory of somebody I knew. This is the life he chose. And just like that, one day he was gone. This is the life he chose. A life of discipline, of daily routine, steady checks and punctual car rides. A well-earning son, the proud statesman. This is the life he chose. Early walks through his favorite park, rounds of whiskey carefully counted, measured bites of his beloved food. This is the life he chose. Favored child to his mother, distant yet respectful to his father, indulgent only to one sister. This is the life he chose. He loved often and quickly each new girl in the office, showering them with gifts and stolen hours. This is the life he chose. 2 children, a wife to complete the picture, a wife after all to tend to his needs, a big house with beautiful walls, and the quiet luxury of maids. Pillar to friends, helping hand to family, a man everyone could call, but few could know. This is the life he chose. And just like that, one day he was gone, and the home, the walls, the park, the wife, the children, all carried the echo of the life he left behind. This is the life he chose.
And Manisha mentioned the writers group. That's the group we have here at Phoenixville Library called Words in Progress. They meet the 3rd Saturday of each month upstairs at 1 o'clock. So if you are savoring some constructive criticism for your writing, please feel free to join us on, and actually this coming Saturday is our next gathering. All right, who do we have next? Next up is David Frank. All right. David Frank's wife, Eva Maria Frank, fought cancer for 10 years before she succumbed. While she was undergoing treatment, she had dreams about Jesus helping her get well. And Jesus had little helpers called the Tomta, tiny dwarves that planted healthy things in the bad cells, making them healthy again. She wrote a book from the point of view of a little girl to try to help children with their own healing, and also to let them know that Jesus is there to help them. David.
These are just so you can see the artwork that's involved, because that has a whole lot to do with what the book is. My wife, first of all, her name is Eva Maria Frank. Oh, that's her picture.
Yep, good.
Her name is Eva Maria Frank. She was born in Germany, so it's pronounced Afa, the first part. And the diminutive of Afa is Afy. So I called her Afy, I called her the Frau. I mean, you know, lots of different things. But as Mark was saying, she had fought cancer for, well, first of all, in December of 2009, we were told that she had 2 months to live. And that little girl fought cancer for 10 more years. We call them the bonus years. And this is part of her story about how she survived for those 10 years extra. And she was pronounced cancer-free in, I think it was 2017. So, and that's a miracle for Afy. Now, she wrote it from the point of view of a little girl because she loved children so much. We were unfortunately not able to have any. And she dedicated this book to, all God's children everywhere. And part of the dedication is, it is my fervent hope that this story will help some little ones attain good health through the use of prayer and going to the secret place where Jesus and the tomta will help bring them to full recovery. Now the tomta it's a Swedish word for gnomes. Her best friend is from Sweden, so German Sweden, foreigners. All right, a miracle for Aphie. Hello, my name is Aphie, and I want to tell you my story. I was once very, very sick and had to visit many doctors in the hope that I could get better. Everybody was worried about me. My family, my friends prayed for me. It was a scary time. And then what happened is that one night during her nightly prayers, and she fell asleep, and she asked Jesus for help in getting her better, and because she suffered a great deal. And Jesus told her to go to her secret place, to find that secret place where she could look inside of herself and see the good cells, which were healthy, the white cells, and the dark cells, which were the ones that were making her sick. Okay? And so then, next imagine that you're looking through at your secret place through a portal, a special peephole in your mind. And you see the white bumps and the dark bumps. And she was doing that, and suddenly she saw a cheery little person peeking around and looking straight at me in the portal and winking. And who was that, I wondered, and where did he come from? I felt a connection to him right away, and because of his bushy beard, I decided to name him Papa. And then I saw many more little people who looked like Papa, only much smaller. They looked so familiar to me, like tiny dwarves. So I called them tomta. They were all very, very busy, pushing wheelbarrows full of goodies, things like medicine and healthy food to the dark bumps, so that it could help get me stronger. And when I was sleeping, so even when I was sleeping, I knew these little people, the tomta and Papa, worked on and on. One day I went to my secret place and saw Papa give me a happy thumbs up. Wow, that was really neat, because he was telling me that things were looking good, and that I should visit my secret place often and spend time with all of them. So I did, and you will too. And then one day, there was a soft light coming, and it came closer and closer. And the tomta's eyes were closed and on their hands and pressed together in prayer. It was Jesus. Jesus was here in my special place. He had a beautiful smile on his face and had come to visit and bless them for all the good work they were doing. As he prayed, Jesus shared his love with all of them, giving them hope and faith to continue the good fight. It was so beautiful. Then one day, Papa came with his little girl, and through the peephole showed this beautiful little girl, Aphie, and told her that she was the one that she was working so hard for and praying for. And there's a picture of this little girl in there with big blue eyes with tears coming down her face. And so Aphie thought she was so precious, she called her baby girl. And one day, baby girl jumped up on Jesus' lap, and Jesus hugged her and kissed her, and then he gave her a bouquet of white roses and told baby girl to go plant those amid the dark, bad cells. So she jumped off his lap and ran over and did that, and as she put one in, another one popped into her hand. So she planted all these bouquets of white roses through all of the dark cells. And then Jesus gave her a red rose, a single red rose. And the same thing happened. She put one in the middle of the white roses and another one popped, and so all of them had a red rose for the blood of Jesus. So this went on for a long time. Baby girl, Papa, and Papa brought his little son, Christian, also to fight the fight. And Christian was actually my wife went through, I don't know, 5 or 6 or 7 miscarriages. And the last one was Christian, and he lived till 6 months. He was the longest held child. So then there was silence. I sensed a new reverence and saw Jesus arrive, smiling, almost laughing. He was enjoying the celebration. And he turned his face to me with his arms lifted high, and he spoke these miraculous words. It is done. A hush felt like a soft blanket over all of us. In those 3 little words, all was said. I was truly healed. Jesus had healed me. His power and love had restored me, and I was overcome by his majesty. Before I could even respond to this amazing blessing, Jesus hurried to baby girl and Christian, took their hands and led them to the communion table, and then he said, communion. Then angels appeared everywhere, praising the Lord's mighty name. They carried balloons in every color with flowing festive ribbons trailing behind, which the Tanta playfully jumped for as they floated by, reaching for the joy found in each one. Amid this joyous celebration, Jesus turned to me with the words that still burn in my heart. Now take your good news to all my children everywhere. And with that, all the angels' balloons were released into the world with a special message of faith, belief, healing, and love. Reach for your balloon. This healing message is for you, dedicated to all God's children everywhere. The joyful ends. And then the second half of the book is a coloring book called Color Yourself Healthy. So.
All right, next up is Jeff Mastroberti. Jeff hails from New York City and has been living in Pennsylvania since 2002. He's read poetry at many venues, including libraries, bookstores, and churches, and has hosted poetry open mics in the New York, New Jersey, Pennsylvania area since the late 90s. Jeff, welcome.
Hey, what a night so far, right? It's been great. Just want to prayers to a lot of people and everybody here. All right, so this, I'm going to do like 4, but they're short, so probably be less than 5 minutes. It's something I wrote in 2009, actually in April. It's sad that anyone who loved you hurt you by your own perception. So you drove them all away. You convinced yourself it's okay. I guess it's easier that way. It's a shame you are so sensitive. It turned your heart to stone. No one can get through to you. Your thoughts are always on the run. That's that. Okay, that was the first one. All right, this one I wrote after 9/11, and I guess I was doing a lot of writing not in September, but October, and I just happened to find it today, and I just sent a text. I have an idea. Let's pray that for the next 2 minutes, everyone in the world experiences at the same time, at the same exact time, an overwhelming feeling of peace. When the 2 minutes are over, like a drug, it leaves us all wanting that feeling back again, and makes us all realize, including Bin Laden, and I could use other names now, that nothing could be solved with violence. Prayer is our best resource right now, and God, the one that we all believe in, no matter what our religious belief, is waiting for our request. And that's that. All right, then, let's see. To lighten it up, I used to, does anybody know MAB paint? Here's a
Yes.
commercial. Perfectionist? Maybe so. I don't like doing things halfway, that's all. This house, for instance, it's decorated with the best from floor to ceiling. All from MAB. Frankly, I don't want to paint and decorate every year, so I stick to a name I know means quality, MAB. It gives me more spare time for the things I enjoy. All right, and then there's one more. All right, why did I accept the sunlight in your eyes when I was ready to begin again? Although you brought me to another level, I quickly learned you were so far out of reach. I could not help but pursue you. Now I'm left cold and alone. I need to find somebody new who could be for me what I have been for you. I know I cannot go through it once again in the same role that I have been in. I allowed you to seep into my blood. Now it's draining out of me, leaving me cold and hard as a stone. I thought I had someone down here who watched my back, who I could feel is always there with me. I guess I lost my connection with God along the way. Now I'm cold and hard as a stone. And that's it. Really? So fun.
Holly Beebe
That was
has been writing in rhythm and rhyme for decades and published her first children's book, The Day When Daisy Learned to Dance, last year. She's excited to announce that she is now signed on with a traditional publisher and her new illustrator for her next book, Daisy and the Veggie Hater. It should be out by the end of the year. She's been offering Daisy events to early learning centers, libraries, and kindergartens for the last several months. This includes passing around Daisy, a stuffed animal, reading the book, and dancing with the kids. One grandpa got Daisy dancing the whole time, and he stole the show. Although she does write about topics other than Daisy the dog, she'll be reading another Daisy story tonight because she still has books to sell. Holly.
This is actually a true story. When I was a little girl, we had a really wild dog named Jasper. And if the door didn't latch, he would run out in the neighborhood. And at that time, they had dog catchers. And the dog catchers could never catch him because he was that fast. So one day, we lived across the street from the grammar school. And one day I was walking to school in the rain and the dog followed me. And my mom, and I'm screaming at the dog, my mom is running after us in her robe with her long wet hair. We all end up in the school. The dog creates havoc and the janitor gets involved. So this is a true story. So Daisy normally is a voice of reason or a mediator. In this case, the wild side of Daisy comes out. It's called Daisy's Crazy Day in School. On a very rainy day, Drew was starting on her way when Daisy thought it would be cool if she could go with Drew to school. "Daisy, please don't follow me," Drew begs Daisy desperately. "You see, there is a special rule and dogs do not belong in school." Daisy's fur is getting wet. She's soaked right to the bone, and yet she only wants to get her way. She has to go to school today. "Mom, Daisy won't stay home and she won't let me walk alone. You've got to stop her, please." Daisy shakes and starts to sneeze. "Daisy girl, you must stay home and let Drew walk to school alone." But now Mom has to chase the pair in her robe and long wet hair. Daisy runs into a room with muddy paws and starts to zoom, jumps on the kids and runs right out. The teacher then begins to shout, "Dogs do not belong in school. Don't you know there is a rule?" Daisy darts around outside.
She is on a wild ride. Mom is running, so is Drew. The janitor is running too. He's chasing Daisy with a broom. Still the dog can't help but zoom. Children laughing, screaming now. Will someone stop this dog somehow? Finally, she's all zoomed out and tired of running all about. Mom picks her up and carries her, this wet and smelly ball of fur. So Daisy, did you have some fun out there scaring everyone? Daisy cannot help but smile. She had a blast there for a while. But do you think she learned the rule that dogs do not belong in school?
No.
You're right. My books are for sale at $15 if you want one. I'm also doing a book reading at the town center in Collegeville for 3 to 6-year-olds. I'm going to read the book, get the kids to dance with me, hand out these little miniature daisies, and coloring sheets for the next book. So if you know of any young kids, you can grab a flyer there. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Tony. All right, we have 5 writers remaining. And next up is CJ Hedrick. CJ is 38 years old and processes invoices for a company in Exton. He has 2 digital novels on Amazon and is currently editing the 3rd in a planned trilogy. Tonight he'll be reading an excerpt from another story in development, the working title Miles Hawk, Rise of the Rogues. CJ.
Okay, let's see what I can do with the atmosphere now. On the lower decks of the old eyesore, Tina glanced around, pulling out her cracker whip. As she moved it to a control panel, the lights of the panel blinked out. Tina scowled as she turned away, seeing Lubai in her path. The limited lighting caught her fur and the angles of her wolfen features. "You, what you doin'?" Lubaya asked with a smug grin. "Trying to avoid you, for a start. Smart, smart. Why, if I were to catch you hacking into my ship, who knows what I'd do to you?" Tina started to walk past, but Lubaya put a heavy hand on her shoulder. "Actually, I have another reason for hunting you down. Miles wants to know if you can swing us some fake credentials for Malurian space dock." "Probably. What's the plan?" "Short version. We walk right into a repair station and fly out with one of their ships." Tina scoffed. "That Captain of Oz doesn't do things by half." "Oh, but if only. The fastest space-worthy vessel," he said. "Not an unwise decision. Unless I have clear access to their network and their schedules, there's no way of telling when a specific ship will be surfaced. He can customize it later." "And I assume when we have the vessel," Lubaya said, "you can isolate it from their network while giving us a handy back door to monitor them with. A simple feat for the Scorpion, isn't it?" "You exaggerate, Quartermaster. The suggestion would be absurd for anyone with even a smidgen less skill than myself. Even if I pull it off, I'd have to randomize my server address every 15 minutes to avoid getting detected and blocked. I'd need a more powerful server than the one on my person to do that." "You're hinting you need more access to Ian's server systems than I've given you." "I'll tell you outright," Tina growled. "Asking a hacker to run full pelt without the best tools is like asking a surgeon to perform a transplant with a spoon. Stop me if that analogy is too hard for you. But you don't necessarily need this ship's computer. Any isolated system would work if it's sufficiently advanced. So we'll give you full command over our new ship's emergency backup system. That'll give you all the power you need." "Guess I can't argue that." "See, I knew we'd get along," Lubaya said, backing away with a grin. "Next thing you know, I'll let your bitch slip slide and not punish you for it." She started to turn away, only to spin back around. "Now, however, I'm gonna have you sweep the floors of our new ship after we escape." "Yes, Quartermaster." After Lubaya walked out, Tina muttered, "Go eat your own shit, you miserable." Lubaya's head poked around the corner with a bloodthirsty grin. "Just a day to make the credentials. 2 tops." Lubaya remained silent, retaining her smile and eye contact as she slowly disappeared around the corner. Tina fell to her knees and took several panicked breaths.
And CJ number 2 is up next, CJ McGroarty. She's a former reporter for the Philadelphia Inquirer and a Pushcart Prize nominee with an MFA in creative writing. Her work has appeared in a variety of literary journals and magazines. Her debut novel, Clara in a Time of War, was published in 2022 by Atmosphere Press. Her second novel, The House on Chambers Road, a supernatural mystery set in the Philadelphia suburbs, was published in 2025 by Literary Wanderlust and won a Literary Titan Gold Award. She is currently submitting her third novel, a historical mystery set in 1788 Philadelphia, for publication. CJ, welcome.
So much good writing here tonight, very touching. Okay, so my new novel is Artemis Peak Hits Her Mark. Artemis Peak is a single mother living in Philadelphia in 1788. And she's just gotten a note from a man who claims to be a friend of her late father's. And he's asked her to come have tea because he wants to speak to her about something. She doesn't know what, and she really doesn't know who he is, but she's eager to go meet him. So this is the chapter where she does that. I'm going to start a little ways into the chapter. At 7th Street, you know where that is in Philadelphia, yeah? She crossed over the wide thoroughfare of Market, and 63 paces later, she was standing in front of Mr. Christopher's house, 2 stories of sturdy red brick, sitting alone on a corner, with white shutters and a blue door, just as he described it. She checked her reflection in one of the tall front windows and straightened her hat. Then she pulled up the black iron ring on the knocker and banged it twice, thwack, thwack, against the iron plate. As she waited for someone to admit her, the house girl, she assumed, a gentleman approached down the square, lifted his black cocked hat to her, and hurried on his way. She stood a while longer and knocked again. Surely Mr. Christopher was in there somewhere. He had, after all, taken the trouble to summon her. When she raised her hand to the knocker a third time, she hesitated, feeling it vaguely uncivilized to be pounding and pounding at a stranger's door. But perhaps Mr. Christopher was a bit deaf, and his house girl out of earshot. She brought the ring down on the plate with a little more force. The door inched inward. Artemis mounted the marble stoop, pushed on the door, and stepped into the dim foyer. "Good day," she called, trying not to shout. She took another step and called again. Perhaps he'd fallen into a nap, but where was his house girl? Some way in front of her to the left, a stairway trailed up a wall to a landing, turned and then climbed to the second floor. Up ahead on the right, a wide archway opened to what was likely a parlor. "Mr. Christopher? Mistress Peak here." Had he been called away at a moment's notice and failed to latch the door? She picked out the aroma of something baked, the biscuits he had promised. Taking a few more cautious steps, she peered into the parlor, her eyes drawn first to 3 fine Delft vases arranged on a carved mantelpiece under which a low fire burned. On a table a few feet to the right, a tray was set out with cups and saucers, spoons, and a teapot, steam trailing up from its spout. And there, in a winged chair beside the table, dozed a small, compact man dressed in blended wool breeches, a fine linen waistcoat, and a frock of good brown broadcloth. His head leaned snugly against one of the wings, his white hair combed back from his face. "Mr. Christopher," Artemis whispered, loath to startle him. The fire hissed, and then came the faint tick of the case clock behind the winged chair. "Mr. Christopher?" Artemis whispered again with a bit more hesitation. When still he didn't stir, she went and laid a hand to his shoulder, but drew it back with a start when she felt a sudden familiar sting, like a finger burned by a flame. A sting she felt before on the odd occasion when something or someone was not quite right. Granny Peak's peculiar trait that had passed to her. She took a long breath, stepped into the hallway, and peered toward the back of the house. An unnerving silence had settled over the place. Seeing no one, she stepped back to the winged chair and gazed again at the still steaming teapot, and then, what was that on the tray behind it? A ring? She picked it up. A man's ring, by the look of it, heavy, silver, with a design carved into its round head. What was it doing on the tea tray? Please wake up, Mr. Christopher, Artemis said, a pleading note in her voice. Sir? With a gentle shake of his shoulder that did not rouse him, she began to suspect an attack of the heart. That could explain why his arm was stretched over his middle in a way that now seemed to her unnatural, the hand tucked between his waistcoat and frock at an upward angle. Seized with a need to do so, she slid his hand from under his frock and gasped. His fingers and palm glistened red. Judas, she whispered, catching her breath. Dong! The case clock in the corner began to toll the hour. She let Mr. Christopher's still warm hand fall to his side, and heart tapping quick as a rabbit's, she peeled his frock away from where the hand had been concealed. His waistcoat bore a ragged tear, and a great red stain had spread over it. You poor dear soul, she said with a shudder. You've been murdered. Okay, so that's, I'll stop there.
Love the variety of genres we get tonight at this event. All right, and then there were three. Ivan Stiles. Ivan Stiles is an American folk musician celebrated for his mastery of the autoharp. His musical career began in the 1980s, and he has since become a prominent figure in the folk music community. He has achieved significant recognition in autoharp circles, winning several prestigious competitions. Beyond performing, Ivan has been an influential educator and author. He co-founded and co-edited Autoharp Quarterly magazine from 1988 to 1997. He also authored the instructional book Jigs and Reels for the Autoharp. Ivan Stiles also boasts a notable legacy in graphic design and illustration. In 2019, he published a book titled Family Portraits, the autobiographies of a mother and daughter, chronicling the lives of his mother and grandmother. And this was followed in 2025 by a book called Good, Bad, Verse, a compilation of his mother's 100 light verses. Ivan.
I don't remember doing all that. No wonder I'm so tired. Well, I won't have time to read things out of this book, but I'll read my introduction and my grandmother's foreword. 2204 Pine Street, that's the book that's in here, is born out of love, dedication, and determination. My grandmother, Virginia Davison Bennett's love of her childhood and to Philadelphia where she grew up. My mother, Barbara Bennett Talley's dedication to completing the manuscript, and my determination to see their efforts published in a form that could be passed on to future generations. The original manuscript was left unfinished upon grandmother's death in 1944. However, she left many key words with the manuscript which were enough for mother to pick up where where grandmother left off. And through mother's efforts, the key words were researched and the manuscript was finally completed during the mid-1960s. Through the miracle of this computerized age, I've been able to add many photographs from the family album. I never had the privilege of knowing my grandmother, but through 2204 Pine Street, I've grown to know her better and thank her for sharing her childhood with us. This is the foreword by my grandmother. Not long ago, I was invited to an exhibition of antiques. To my surprise, I found not ancient armor, not Mayflower loot, but my own past. I was shocked to see in a museum a replica of the walnut bed in which I had had measles, the antimacassars I had rested my head upon, the lambrequins, the Rogers groups, the cuspidors of my childhood. I'm no longer young in years, but I am young in heart, blithe in spirit. My arches haven't fallen and my teeth are sound. Yet there I was, ready to be cataloged along with the rest of the aged specimens in the room. The glances of passers-by gave me an eerie feeling that the curator had already pinned a label on my back. I looked around me like Rip Van Winkle. The years have flown. My youth now lay in this tomb of antiquities. I am a legend. But having made hay in the mellow glow of old sunshine, I now endeavor to bind it into sheaves, chaff and all. Literary food for thought for coming generations. but I cannot make the usual disclaimer that the persons of whom I write are fictional, or that any resemblance they or recounted events have to reality is purely coincidental, for they were all very real. The only one to take offense is the little girl I once was, who was very real and very silly. I have written of her quite frankly, and I wish she were back again, that same proud, vain little girl, in that same snobbish Philadelphia, for it was all very delightful living one's childhood there. This is how much of the book is my grandmother's autobiography. The rest of it is my mother's autobiography. Back in the late 1970s, when Mother began this autobiography, she had no access to a word processor or one of those sophisticated computers we enjoy today. Instead, she typed each page on her mother's typewriter, which was purchased in 1938. Photos and original documents were pasted in position, and the completed manuscript was photocopied for family members in 1980. Unfortunately, photocopying left much to be desired as far as photographs were concerned. It's been my desire since digitizing 2204 Pine Street, my mother's memoirs, to do the same with Mother's autobiography. Technology has even given me the ability to digitize the original manuscript, scan and retouch the original photos and documents, replace black and white images with their color counterparts, and add many items that we weren't able to put into the original. Since Mother's first photocopy, many of the persons named are no longer with us. Many of the references are no longer applicable. Regardless, she was certain that, quote, the virtues of any era should be documented, lest they be forgotten and lost to succeeding generations, end quote. And this is her dedication. It has been said that everyone has a book in him or her. This is mine. And as I don't think I have another in me, it is a temptation to dedicate this one to everyone I would like to dedicate a book to, if there were more to come. But since I can't include my, quote, past, unquote, of thousands, I dedicate it to my children and their children, and to all my family for whom it has been written, and to anyone else in whom it strikes a chord of fond nostalgia, love, interest, and respect for the times and places I've loved. Now, her book was Oh Me, the Autobiography of a Childhood, and most of her childhood was in Nutley, New Jersey. But in here, not only does she write of her childhood in Nutley, but she also writes chapters on her father, her mother. They were both very fine painters. Her brothers, people in the village, her time at the Jersey Shore, her time in Paris, and her time at Eden Hall, which is an exclusive girls' school in Torresdale. It's no longer there, and many other things. That is Family Portraits. I do have a couple of copies if you're interested, and it's $10 cheaper here than it is on Amazon.
All right.
Thank you.
All
Don't
right.
forget your cane.
Your cane behind you.
That's why I wouldn't be.
No, okay.
You want me to grab it?
I got it. I'll be there sooner.
All right, Evan Harbaugh is up next. Evan is a mental health therapist by profession with a postgraduate clinical license, but he writes in his spare time. He generally writes across genres, including romance, adventure, and sci-fi fantasy. He's also a trained researcher for the social sciences and received an award for research as an undergrad. He has copies of his novellas available for purchase here tonight. Evan.
Thank you. This is the second scene of the sequel to the second sequel to Prism, which I have here, along with Aurora, which is the first sequel. So it's going to be called Polychrome. And this, I also want to make sure that this is part of a much longer work. And I understand that some of the things I talk about in this are not necessarily representative of the whole thing. Okay? Looking through barred windows at the recess yard of the orphanage, Ollie watched the other boys playing ball. He wasn't like them. He was taught that from a young age. He was different, not special, but different. Ollie turned away from the window and looked around his room, seeing a few meager toys, a bed, and a dresser. On the dresser was a Bible and rosary beads. Every so often, one of the nuns would let him out to use the lavatory and wash up. And thankfully, less often, the Monsignor would come and pray with the rosary with him and perhaps bring altar wine. Ollie didn't like the other things that he would do with him, but he knew with faith came sacrifice. This is the greatest lesson he had learned, that one's faith was only as strong as how much that one person could give up. Asceticism was the greatest demonstration of faith possible. How much can one person give? How much of one's own blood can be spilt for the glory of God? It wasn't until that very gray afternoon in November that Ollie realized what was possible. The Monsignor arrived at Ollie's door, unlocked it, and came inside with a cruet of wine. Monsignor Elias Roth was an outspoken advocate for abstinence education and the removal of gay identifying clergy. "Have you done it again?" asked the priest. "Yes," said Ollie. "I got upset again. I threw the toy car across the room without touching it like before." "This power comes from evil." The priest sat down on the bed. "You need to cast this abomination away. You need to try to abstain from using this dark power." "I understand," said Ollie, "but I don't know how." "Let us pray." The priest reached into the pocket of his robes and retrieved his beads, while Ollie obeyed by getting his off of the dresser. During the rosary, I want you to think about how God's creation has rules, much like the church has rules. You must obey those rules. You must not take the easy way to get through life. Faith is sacrifice, and faith is the most important thing in the world. Ollie nodded. As they prayed, Ollie's mind began to wander. Some non-Catholics might think that it is impossible to really have a full train of thought when you are speaking and counting on beads. But most people educated in Catholic primary schools can say the prayers of the rosary like they are second nature, unforgettable and automatic even after years of dormancy. Ollie thought about his power and how Monsignor called it unnatural and against God. Just then a baseball hit the window, broke the glass, and rolled across the floor of Ollie's room. "Oh no," murmured the Monsignor. "Let me get the broom and pan." The priest left, locking the door behind him. That's when it clicked for Ollie. If a baseball, a thing that could be used for healthy fun and enjoyment, can also accidentally hurt someone or destroy something, it can also be used as a weapon. If the pitcher wanted to, he could throw the ball at the batter's head. There would be consequences, like an automatic walk, or repercussion for the abuse. He thought, a tool is neither good nor bad. It's the usage of the tool that can be judged as good or bad, or even accidental. And his power was no different. It was a tool, one to be used for good or evil. Ollie looked at the doorknob and concentrated, imagining a key being inserted into the lock. He turned the knob in his mind, and so it turned. The lock clicked, and he opened the door with his hand. I'm free.
All right, and last but not least, it's our friend from Maryland, Caroline Alanthus. Caroline, hold on. After I read your bio, I have to turn the monitor around so people can see you. Caroline is a novelist, blogger, and a freelance writer and editor. Most of her work revolves around science somehow, even her fiction, or perhaps especially her fiction. She is the author of 4 novels, To Give a Rose, Ecological Memory, Bifurcation Events, and The Elf, the Dwarf, and the Telegraph Book 1, as well as various blogs, short stories, and essays. Caroline grew up in Delaware and attended various small odd schools, mostly in New England. She has a BA in Environmental Leadership and an MS in Conservation Biology. She now lives in Maryland with her husband and assorted dogs and cats. And when she's not writing, she can usually be found either walking her beagles or making a complete mess of the kitchen. All right, Caroline, hang on. I come down and get you here. All right. Hey there. Okay. Okay. Caroline's on the left, in case you can't tell. All right, I don't know what the volume is, so Karen, go ahead and say something. Let me see what the volume's like here.
Hello.
Say hello.
Something.
Oh,
There you go.
okay, all right. We can hear you. Good.
Hello.
Hello.
Hello. Hello.
Hello.
Hello.
Hello. Okay, I'm going to read a scene. Last year I read the preface to Elf, the Dwarf, and the Telegraph Book 1. It's still my most recent book, so I'm going to read one scene from it. The only thing you need to know for this to make sense is that this detachment from the army was not, so their camp was supposed to be fortified, and the commanding officer decided that wasn't necessary, and that was wrong. Pyrrhus was under one of the equipment tarps when he heard yelling and saw men running by with axes. Then he heard the signal horns blow as the centurions sought to organize the defense. The brigands ignored equipment and concentrated on people, so they parted around the tarp like a wave goes around a bowl. My mouth is not cooperating tonight. Like a wave goes around a boulder. Pyrrhus, standing more or less in the lee of various boxes and barrels, escaped their notice. He was not armed, nor did he have his cuirass or helmet. He knew his duty was to find his civilian subordinates and keep them and himself out of harm's way, except he could not do that. A messenger's horse stood saddled and waiting. A small cache of arms, including several cavalry bows and full quivers, sat nearby in boxes. Pyrrhus strung one of the bows, took 2 quivers, and set about calming the horse, who was not battle-trained and had correctly assessed the situation as very bad. He did not hurry, showed no anxiety, and paid no particular attention to the axe-wielding men. Before long, the horse quieted, though she was still visibly afraid, and gave him a look like, "Okay, what do you intend to do about all this, then?" "Good question." And
Oh boy.
Sir. He mounted the horse and 10 who had organized into defensive formations, with the brigands chewing into them like ants around drops of honey. Pyrrhus was outside it all, looking in, and no one paid any attention to him. The horse wanted to leave. She was no longer panicked, but she kept turning to go, and he kept having to turn her back. "There's no point in running away," he told her in a quiet voice. "We just have to face it. We just have to be brave, okay?" He scratched her neck. Her slightly shaggy hide felt good and warm under his palm. He could feel the power of her body, still just itching to run away, through his legs. A large fly flew by on business of its own. You hardly ever see flies en route to their next appointment. But he saw that one. He felt the horse come. He urged her forward a step or two, just to see if she'd do it. "Okay, you ready now?" And he signaled her to gallop, not into the fray, but at an oblique angle to it. Once in range and sure of not hitting the wrong targets, He shot arrow after arrow into brigand backs while guiding the horse with his knees. When the survivors turned around to see where the arrows were coming from, he was no longer there. Nobody could find him, so no one could stop him. When he'd exhausted his quivers, he circled back around to the equipment tarp and supplied himself for another run. He made 3 runs in all before his horse needed a break, and by then the battle was ending anyway. His body count that day, while impressive for a single man, could not of itself affect the outcome of the battle. But the brigands could not concentrate, knowing that someone they couldn't see with a bow could be anywhere behind them, and then they became a lot easier to cut down. Few escaped. Nobody had gotten a very good look at the man on the horse, and Hires didn't bother to mention his exploit to anyone. So it wasn't until supper the next day that a messenger found him and told him to report to the Tribune's tent. There he found the commanding Tribune and the acting prefect sitting in folding chairs waiting for him. He saluted and stood at attention. The acting prefect told him to relax, but not to sit down. "Yesterday," began Tribune Bahalis without preamble, "you took a horse not assigned to you, took weapons not assigned to you, engaged the enemy without orders, and neglected your duty to your own subordinates of the conduct code?" "Yes, sir." "Well, sir, I acted without orders because the situation had changed since my orders were given, and I had no opportunity to receive new ones. I neglected my duty to my subordinates because, in my judgment, the acting prefect had the same duty and did not need me to assist, whereas the rest of you did need me." "Indeed we did." "Sir, am I to be punished?" Hires wasn't worried. He just wanted the lecture over. "Gods, no. I just wanted to make sure insubordination and dereliction of duty aren't part of your ordinary MO. I don't know you very well." "Consult my service record, sir. Under ordinary circumstances, such behavior would endanger the men and compromise the mission. I would not do that, sir." "I see," said the Tribune. "Well, I'm putting you in for a medal when we get back to base." "I'd rather receive a cash bonus." "Oh? My wife, sir. She likes pretty things. I'd like to get her a new dress."
Thank you, Caroline. And since you're not here with us tonight, are all your books still available? And if so, from where?
They're all still available. As far as I know, all online booksellers have them. Amazon certainly does. You can also order from my publisher, Saltwater Media. They have an online storefront. If you want signed copies, you can get a hold of me, and we can arrange something that way too.
Very good. Thank you, Caroline. Thanks, everyone. That concludes our open mic night. This portion of it. The next portion is mingling and talking to our fellow writers here. So thank you, everyone, for participating tonight. It's been another wonderful evening and all uplifting and stirring and moving and so many other things.
Thank you, Mark.
Yep, great to have you all here. Thank you.